In the 1950s and 60s, there was a British psychologist by the name of John Bowlby, and he developed a framework of attachment. And in his observations, he actually realized that children with the parents and the caretakers have different attachment styles. So even though since then this framework has been added upon and upon for many reasons, today I'm just going to talk about John Bowlby's attachment styles. So therefore, let's go for the first one. The first one is what we call the secure attachment style. And that's the primary goal for the caregiver and to have a good relationship with the child. So when you have a secure attachment style, essentially what happens is that the child develops a reassurance from the caregiver. So they know that they can actually cry. And the caregiver is actually going to come and comfort them. So they know that it's going to be okay. And they actually know that even if they have a tantrum, the caregiver is always going to be emotionally available for them. And not only that the caregiver's emotion availability is also encouraging the child to explore the world. And the caregiver will always be saying to go out there and see what the world is going to offer you. That caregiver will always be there. They will always have that support. That they will always be the one that constantly are there to support and develop their ideology of the world. And they know then that the world is not against that child, and the child knows that the world is not against them. So they can go out, they can trust people, and then they don't have to be paranoid that someone is actually going to harm them. And because of the primary caregiver, the tone of how they see the world, they see it as growing older, very secure. So we can actually put this as the ideal one. And the next three are considered unsecure attachment styles. So let's go for the first one. The anxious attachment style is the one that different people or different caregivers are given, and they're not consistent. So there's no time for the caregivers to might be comforting the child, and they're not really giving so much love or nurturing like a secure attachment style person. And then and other times the caregiver is not available. So the caregiver might even be dismissive, which is horrible. And the caregiver might shut the child down. So now the child is developing this idea that the world is not reliable. And this actually creates a terrible anxiety within the child because he never really knows what's going on or what he's going to get. The next one is the avoidant attachment style. And this one is pretty tricky because is avoidant. And the caregiver gives the survival needs to the child. Let me explain. So they can give them the shelter, they can give them food, but however, they're not loving or nurturing the same way as a secure attachment style. And there's no providing for this. So this is very dismissive. Around the child, there's always a thing where they need to toughen up. They can't cry. There is the responsibility to be strong, and providing only these survival needs like food and shelter. When they occur, and when this occurs, the child learns that they have to mature extremely quickly. And the actual child learns not to depend emotionally on others. The child learns that they really need to hold everything strong, including their emotions. And because it's almost like a sign of weakness that creates inside of the child who is emotionally unavailable. The fourth one is a little bit lethal for me, and is tremendously strong to understand on why this happens, but is the disorganized attachment style. And it's called disorganized because you will actually see traces on other people to secure the attachment style. And So this is what the disorganized means. It's got a little bit of everything, and there is usually the neglect and abusive behavior that's happening to the child. Essentially, the child will learn that, okay, yeah, the parent and the caregiver sometimes may be kind, but then sometimes they may be nurturing, or maybe they just be neglectful, and the parent may not even be there for the child. They might be even be abusive. So there's a lot of trauma that comes from here, and that creates what we call a disorganized attachment style. It makes them anxious, and the child is extremely fearful. The child will go for this attachment with the parent, but is extremely afraid to try and reach out, and creates this kind of disorganized and anxiety on the child. And to be honest, he doesn't know what to do. The child is very kind on stuck in the middle of the ocean himself. But because it's not only that they're missing the food and the shelter, but they're also missing the reassurance, the love, the sprinkles, and everything else that every human being is actually asking for. These are very intense moments, and the fear that the caregiver is probably one of the most horrible people, and it creates traumatic things that will occur in the future in the brain and in their environments. So you can actually see things that these can show up on relationships. Let's just go for a little bit of a breakdown on what can really this affect you in your life. Well, let's talk about people with secure attachment styles. So when you have like a secure attachment style, you're able to develop very healthy relationships, and you're able to have relationships where you can trust your partner and your friends. And that doesn't mean that your partner is not going to lie. That doesn't mean there's no bad things happening, but they're not happening to you. They happen because they happen. And then things will develop with time. And the secure attachment style is able to regulate yourself in a better way. And you don't have this intense of feeling of possessiveness and controlling for your partner. And you don't have to have this over feeling that your partner is going out there and is going to cheat and is talking to people and they're unhealthy in what they're planning to actually hurt you. So secure attachment style in the long term tends to have a long lasting relationship. Now, people with anxious attachment styles, they manifest often in relationships. There's actually a lot of anxious people with this style, and you have a fear of abandonment, and you have this fear because your parenting style was a little bit more inconsistent, and you never knew what you were going to get from your caregiver. So it's kind of putting you on an edge on that you have a need to be approved by your partner, and that actually has a need of possession for a partner. You have a need that you always feel like you're gonna left behind, that they cheated on me. Why is he talking to that girl? Why is he laughing at her? What are they talking about? Are they gonna play me? So you have this paranoia because it's like this thing is going in your head over and over again, and it's like you also almost having to dance with your partner and all the time to make sure that you're satisfied. You're in constant state of anxiety. People with avoidance style attachment styles, they're also a little bit tricky too because they're often emotionally distant and they act like they don't need you, but they really want you and they want to be vulnerable, but they're really sad and they don't want to be as vulnerable as maybe other attachment styles are, because they want sometimes to break through this difficult situation with the partner. And to be honest with you, is something that they crave for. They need this emotional connection. A lot of these people just give up because they're like, you are not emotional available every time and I try and get close to you. So the other person kind of gets a little bit freaked out and you push them away, and then the person is doing that because it's a form of self-preservation, and because of that they know that even in the core, they want that emotional connection, but because of that attachment style, they just like they have to preserve themselves. They have to emotionally be cold. And they appear like this because they don't need you and they don't need anybody, and that often happens. With a disorganized attachment style, it's all over the place because of trauma and because you are severely neglected as an infant with your caregiver, and you're going to be all over the place as mentioned, and you're going to be emotionally erratic, and you're going to be on a sign of highs and lows on a regular basis. And with these moments where you're experiencing intense love, and then there's a moment where I hate this and it's not for me and it's totally disorganized. Because for you, it's almost like a trauma response with people with attachment styles like this. It's all over the place, as mentioned. And away from all of this framework is a lot to be talked up nowadays because there's a lot to be added. But this is the framework that was between the 50s and the 60s. And this is easier for us to actually understand on why certain people cannot really sustain a relationship, or they actually find it really difficult. And it's really good as a starting point, and it's really like if you find yourself in a place where you're like or you really, let's say, in that place, like maybe I'm the problem, maybe you should have some kind of therapy or coaching, because your attachment style is what is going to actually help you on your day-to-day basis and with your relationships. So I will have to say that there is nothing wrong about asking for help. I mean, you could be unpacking a lot, and it's a good place to start and really talk to yourself about it. You should do maybe this on a regular basis. There's a lot of people that are going through it. A coach, as mentioned, a psychologist, a therapist will help you to put your thoughts together. Don't think that it's a misconception and that people think that you're crazy. Maybe talk about thinking about your feelings, and this can actually help you to move forward to a better quality of life. There's only one secure attachment style, and then we have unfortunately, the anxious, the avoidant, and the disorganized. And this is based on John Bowlby's framework, who's really developed it. So there's a lot more to talk about, but just again, reach out to somebody to help you. Talk to a friend, maybe talk to somebody that is on therapy right now, because this is the core of all the problems, and there's a way to find it. Find yours and keep moving forward.